Could you read the roll?
Mr. Bozen?
Here.
Mr. Amos? Mr. Morrissey?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Foyce?
Here.
Mr. Greider?
Here.
And Mrs. Jewin?
Here.
Can I get a motion for the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
That motion has been made with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
what's the amendment?
I'm sorry, Pat. I missed the word proposed or amended.
Oh, okay, thanks.
My bad.
Motion's been made with first, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have an agenda. Mr. Amos did let me know that he would not be in attendance, so definitely hearts and minds go out to Mr. Amos. All right, Mr. Morrissey.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I, on a couple occasions had talked about the process known as mudjacking and questioning why it was not being used for or within the city of Waterloo as part of a city policy as an option for residential and commercial customers to use if it meets the criteria to use them, meaning that mudjacking can be used on those slabs or sections or areas that have not cracked, fractured, or been broken, but are in a state of unevenness or have gone below that level or have sunken below the level of compliance. And that has resulted in this work session. And I have written up a resolution which was an attachment, but in doing that, I wanted to have time to have a presentation from people who are aware or are involved with the mudjacking process. So I had asked Mr. Combs, Tim Combs, if he would be part of this, and I believe that he is there, and he has a thumb drive presentation or a PowerPoint to give, and also Mr. Rich Penn, if he is there, to say a few words as part of this presentation, Mr. Mayor. Hello?
All right, we're waiting. Yes, please proceed.
Okay, well, being as that I'm not there, I'm sure that Mr. Combs is there if he could be allowed to present.
Hello, everyone.
It's your floor, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. And Pat, for the time to come and explain a little bit about what mudjacking is all about, I guess. My name is Tim Combs. I'm the owner of BC Construction Incorporated here in Waterloo. We've done concrete work for 30 some years, and I've done mudjacking now, concrete raising, I call it. Try to make it a little nicer term than mudjacking, but I've done that now we've got over 10 years involved in doing that in the Blackhawk County area and basically northeast Iowa. So put together a little presentation for you that just shows the basics, shows some jobs that we've done, give you some facts, some questions that most common in regard to mudjacking, and I can go through those, and then after that I can answer any questions that anybody'd have would have to need answers for. So the first slide, of course, is the name, but the next one then is the basic steps of concrete raising. So when a slab is settled, you'll get the trip hazard, the 1 inch or lower. notification when you see it in a concrete slab. What we do then is we come in and we'll drill an 1 5/8 hole through that slab that is sunk. And then the next phase of that is that we go through and we pump a grout using a small pump. We pump a grout through that hole to fill the void underneath the sidewalk or to help compact the soft dirt that's underneath of it, and to help lift, then it'll lift that piece of concrete back up into place. And we can get it right back up to pretty much zero tolerance from one slab to the other one. And when that is completed, the third step is we come in, we come back, we clean the holes out of the material that we pump into it, and we fill it with a concrete mix, regular concrete patch mix. And from that point, the sidewalk is then again able to be walked on immediately. If it's a slab that involves a vehicle or anything to that effect, then we like to wait 2 to 3 days for that to set up and make sure that the material is dry before a vehicle drives on it. So that is a basic 3-step method that it takes to do this type of work. And I'll show you some projects. The next slide would be a job that we did a few years ago. It's a driveway. Isn't that coming up? There you go. Nope, you had it. There you go. So this is a picture of a driveway that we did, a residential driveway and sidewalk to the walk door of the garage. The slab is down about 4 inches plus at the garage, if you can catch that in the picture. The sidewalk around the side there is about 6 inches down from where it should be at. And the next slide. There you can see where we've drilled the holes. You can see the holes in it. You can actually see we've got the driveway raised back up to where we meet the garage floor. And to smooth that all out, it's the same with the sidewalk all the way around. So all that is at the height. At that point, we have cleaned the holes out, getting ready to patch. So you can move to the next. And then here's one back at the side view. So you can see that the sidewalk is back up. So there we've raised that sidewalk up 6 inches and the driveway's up 4. So now they both meet at that point. The sidewalk was even broke 2 different places there. We got one crack in line, but we can bring those back up to them pretty close to being even with each other. And so that finished that job. This was another job with the driveway again. You can see pretty easy that it's down about 3 inches plus. And we've drilled the holes. That's the little pump that we use to inject the material into the concrete to raise it back up into place. And if you go to the next slide, here's a view of the same driveway that is completed. The holes are patched with concrete. The driveway is back up to meets the garage floor. That surface there, we would allow the customer, we'd have them wait about 3 days before they drive across it. Then that way we know the concrete holes dried and are firm in the concrete itself, and the material is dried and it'll withstand the weight of the vehicle traveling in and out. We'll go to one more. Here's one on a brand new house that was probably about 6 months old, that all the ground settled out from underneath the driveway and the sidewalk. And this is pretty common. I do a lot of these. It's sad to say on a brand new house that you have to come in and do that. But so here the ground underneath the sidewalk is about 3-4 inches below right here on this piece. And you can see where the pump is at right on the right-hand side of that. If we go to the next one. This goes all the way out underneath that driveway there's a water valve out in that driveway. And it's basically the trench is settled from where they dug in the water line coming to the house. So at that point, the next slide will show you how deep that's 10 inches at the top of the concrete. So you take 4 out, we're about 6 to 7 inches below that concrete that's spanning over the top of the earth at that point. So we'll go in and we'll inject material through that to fill that whole void, chase it all the way back up to that sidewalk and around. So that'll fill everything up. The next picture. Here's where the ground is actually settled outside of the driveway where it meets the sidewalk. You can kind of see, the edge of the concrete where the form was at. It's the dark hole is the void goes down underneath that driveway about like so. So we'll end up pushing material all the way out through that to stabilize that existing concrete. And besides regular work in town, flat work, sidewalks, driveways, I mean, we do streets, curbs, we've done parking lots, I've done building floors, I've raised whole garages, floating slab garages, I've raised those up anywhere up to about 6 inches off the ground just to keep water from running back into the garage. This is a grain bin that we did northeast of Blackhawk County. So the center of that sunk about 7 inches. You can see the water there that's sitting from when the rain comes down through the vent. But those we've filled in and leveled that all back out so that way their auger system will work to pick up the grain. So we can do anything with that direction. So then there's some questions, the facts, frequently asked questions in regards to what is mud jacking. So I kind of gave you a description of what that is. What can be mud jacked is basically any flat work that doesn't have a footing that attaches to it that goes 4 or 5 feet in the ground. I have done some machine-based pads within John Deere's that were 4 feet thick, but however it worked, it ended up working out good with raising those back up for them. But so patios, garage floors, sidewalks, we do all day long entrance walks to the homes, from the driveway to the house, from the city sidewalk up to the house. So as far as Waterloo goes, we've never done any in Waterloo that direction. The other thing is void filling. There again, I talked about void filling like that driveway going through. So a lot of times city sidewalks where the sewer and the water came from the street up to the house, those sections of sidewalk always seem to settle. You always find 2 sections of sidewalk that'll be down. I don't care if it's 10 years old or if it's 30 years old. It seems like you can pull them out, replace them, 5, 10 years down the road, they'll sink again. Now those are perfect locations that we can come in and raise. Usually the slabs are fine. We can bump them back up to get them level with the rest of the sidewalk. Tip them back up if we need to tip them away towards the street to get proper flow on it. So we could do any of that direction with the concrete itself. We can go to the next one. A warranty, is there a warranty? So with my company, I offer a 1-year warranty as long as the concrete is 10 years or older. And that's written in our proposal that we give you for an estimate. And if it sinks a 1/2 inch or more, the same direction, we'll come back the next year and raise it back up for you and patch the holes again, as long as we can reuse the same holes without any additional cost. Next question is, when can it be done? Our typical season is from about March till December. All depends on Mother Nature at the time of when things start to freeze and stay cold that direction, we're done. When we can't keep water thawed out, we're pretty much done. Again, the holes, the diameter of a hole is about the size of a golf ball, is what you end up seeing. Those are recognizable pretty much for about for any time with the concrete itself, but they'll blend in pretty close within about 2 to 3 years. So they don't stand out so bad. The type of material we use in my type of concrete raising, we use a fine aggregate material, it's called a fill lime material. So it has real fine rock, a lot of dust from grinding the rock material down to the different sizes. That byproduct is what we use. We add cement with that, mix that up on site, so we can make it thick or thin, whatever we need. And that's what raises the sidewalk up. From that point, we remove that and then put regular cement back in the holes when we're done with it. So that way the holes are patched solid. And how long will the area be out of service? Again, like I said, sidewalks, anything that direction, foot traffic or lawnmower, riding lawnmower or something is open as soon as we're done. We do not disturb the ground around the piece of slab if we don't absolutely have to. Landscaping, anything to that effect does not get disturbed because we don't need to dig anything up. The only shovel we have is what we use to mix the material with on our truck, so. Again, does the city allow raising on city sidewalks? So, it's up to the discretion of the engineer's office, of course, and every city has a different code and a different way they do things. We have not been able to do it in Waterloo. We can do it in Cedar Falls. You have to get a permit, and the only thing they require is to call in for a final inspection after the work is completed. I've done Waverly, I do that quite often, with their city project, with their city program that they have for sidewalk. We get calls for that every year to go up and raise. I've done several small towns all around the area that we work with. Parkersburg, Grundy Center, all those like that, so. Like I said, that all just depends on the city itself. Was there one more? That's it. So that's basically what goes on with the mud jacking process. I'll take any questions.
All right, really quickly, Mr. Morrissey, did you say you had another speaker?
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Rich Penn might be there. He was going to, say a few words. But before Rich comes up, I wanted to make sure that you and all council and the public realizes that, that this is not me making a commercial for Tim Combs and his business. This is me asking an expert to explain the process so that the city council is aware of how this should be an option for commercial and residential customers who have sections that are out of compliance but are not fractured or broken or cracked, where this process can be used effectively. So it's not a commercial.
Keep going, Mr. Morrissey.
So I know Rich Penn is standing there, so I just want to yield to Mr. Penn then.
And not that I didn't take it that way, you know, so I just thought he was making a presentation over a product, so I don't think anybody took it that way. Ms. Jewin, can we get a quick couple seconds from Ms.
Yeah, just quick. Quick question. What I heard is that often this process doesn't last as long. It settles again. And I'd also like to hear, we don't have much time, but I'd like to hear from our city engineer on this.
Yeah, so what I was going to do, Mr. Morrissey is leading this presentation. I was going to have his speakers go first. Then I was going to ask for a presentation from city staff and then ask for questions. So I don't want to delay Mr. Penn with my ranting. So Mr. Penn, did you want to make some quick comments for us, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members. Appreciate the time, and I appreciate this topic being brought up. I've got a little bit of a different perspective on this, I think, but my whole life pretty much has been fixing old things that are needing love. And I own quite a bit of real estate in Waterloo, and when there's been a sidewalk problem, we've always fixed it. Broken sidewalk is broken sidewalk, you gotta replace it. Our property on Sycamore Street was built, I think, back in the 70s, and the sidewalk was put in by Charles Mauser and Company, I think in the 70s, 73. And the sidewalk is largely, well, it's all still good, but there are 7 slabs that have sunk beyond the requirement or beyond the code. And when you look at the sidewalk, when I walk down the sidewalk, I like to see a sidewalk that looks like a sidewalk that doesn't have a bunch of broken pieces that have been fixed. That sidewalk down there doesn't have anything wrong with it at all, other than there are 7 of the sections out of 70 some that have sunk a little bit. And it doesn't make sense for someone like me to bust up good concrete and haul it to the landfill when there's nothing wrong with the concrete. And even though on a project like mine, it might even cost more to have it jacked, although I don't think it would, I'd rather see the old sidewalk there than new sidewalk. And we've had We had our patio jacked at home, I think maybe, well, it had to be more than 10 years ago, I think. I don't know who was doing it back then. And it's fine. We just had our driveway mud jacked here recently, and it's fine. I think that mud jacking is probably a more stable way to do it than tear it up and just pour concrete, because if it's gonna sink again, it's gonna sink whether it's mud jacked or not. If you put new concrete, it's still got the same substructure. But mine is more of an aesthetic issue. If there's not damaged concrete, I hate to see it go to the landfill. If I believed in that, 3 of the buildings that I own downtown would be in the landfill right now, and it would have been replaced with new, but we've saved them. And I think that's important in our community, to continue to save the things that are here. Sidewalk might not seem important, but to guys like me, that it's important. It might not be for everybody, but I think those of us that own real estate should have that as an option. And that's pretty much all I've got to say about it, and I hope you guys would consider adding this as an option for those that own property in Waterloo.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Penn. All right. Mr. Moore, is it that, your presenters?
Yeah, those were the 2 people that I'd asked to be here, other than hear my own voice, which I have comments about as well, but I just am asking that this be put, that my resolution be put on council next week for a vote, to make it as an option for commercial and residential people to use, where they can use it in their sections of sidewalk or concrete that are not broken, fractured, or cracked.
All right. So why don't we do this so council could also hear, Jamie or anyone from engineering, your experiences with mud jacking.
Yeah, Jamie Knudsen, city engineer. Just a few things, and I won't belabor this. Tim did a nice job with what the process is, but I did reach out to a number of communities. Iowa City, Coralville, and Cedar Falls are the only 3 that allow it in the state. Cedar Falls, my understanding is that they are currently having discussions to not allow this repair practice anymore, that there's been issues with it over the years. The city of West Des Moines does allow it in very specific applications. Dubuque, Ankeny, Davenport, Sioux City, Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Waterloo do not allow mud jacking. That's a lot of cities that don't allow it, and a lot of the bigger cities. The other thing I want to point out to council is there's what is called SUDAS. It's the Statewide Urban Design and Specifications. And what that is it's a group of over 100 different cities, counties, private engineering firms, and the DOT that have come together to develop a set of standard specifications that can be used by anybody throughout the state. And contractors are able to understand that if they go from Waterloo to Des Moines to Muscatine, they can have the same set of specs wherever they go. And I sit on the board of directors. Dennis Gens, my assistant, sits on the District 2 committee. There are 6 district committees that look at all of these different things. And to this point, SUDAS, and again, this isn't Jamie, this isn't Dennis, this isn't Waterloo, but this group of over 100 different individuals have decided that this is not an appropriate method to repair publicly owned city sidewalks. Now think about that. You're asking to go against not just your professional staff, but against the experience of all of these other entities to not use it. The other thing that I want to point out that I had sent pictures and emails a while back was I had my driveway mud jacked about 5 years ago. it has settled almost back down to the point of where it was when it was mud jacked. So it does work in certain, I'm not gonna lie, mud jacking works in certain situations, but it is not something that works in every situation, especially where you have poor soils or you have water. And I happen to have both. So another one of the engineers in my office had one of his driveways done. He's had the same trouble with that, with it settling back down as well. Again, I don't wanna take up too much time here, but it's one of those things. It works in very specific applications. There are reasons why that the city has not allowed it, and a lot of cities don't allow it around the state. If council decides to go allow this, we'll do our best to come up with a specification, because currently there aren't any. And we would have to write that from scratch, which is, it can be done, but it's gonna take a while. The other, it just, I guess, bottom line, I'm looking out for the community's best interests, because, you know, as Mr. Penn pointed out, these items, these sidewalks can drop again, even if you replace them. Even if you tear it out and replace them, they can drop again over these water services or sanitary services. And mud jacking isn't gonna keep them from doing that again. What they need to do is remove and replace them and address the underlying issues, and then build back a better sidewalk, meaning they can reinforce it and do some other things. I guess that's all I wanted to bring up.
Jamie,
I don't-
so Jamie, just really quickly, and then we'll get to, I think Councilwoman Jewin had the first question. So, not just because we've had 100 different people not support this, you know, I think folks wanna know is mud jacking, are we saying that, it's not a viable alternative? Are we saying that it only needs to be done in certain situations? Are we saying it doesn't work? That's what I'm trying to figure out or hear. Why these 100 or so, why this organization does not believe this is a viable solution?
I would have to ask them specifically, but it's just not something that has been brought forward by anyone to have as a viable option. And again, it's not that mud jacking, and I don't wanna give Tim, and I've known Tim a long time, I don't wanna give the appearance that his product does not work, because it does in specific situations. And again, I've had as Rich said, he's had his, I've had mine done on private property. And if they sink on private property, that's not the end of the world. But I just don't think it's a good repair method for using on sidewalks. And again, if Cedar Falls is talking about doing away with that option, there's gotta be reasons why.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I was gonna go to Ms. Jewin to ask a question. Mr. Morris.
Well, as the presenter, I just wanted to ask you and any city official there if mud jacking has ever been used using taxpayer dollars on any project in Waterloo.
So.
Has it already been used using taxpayer money?
So, Mr. Morris, you are the organizer of this. Are you gonna allow council to ask questions?
Well, I would like to have Mr. Knutson answer my question.
Mr. Knudsen, has this been used on city sidewalks or whatever?
I'm not aware that mud jacking has. We have used void filling, which is a difference. That when you have material that gets eaten out underneath the concrete, but the concrete is still bridging over everything, we have pumped grout underneath that concrete, yes. And again, my experience is, having seen this over the years, that it's a temporary fix. It doesn't last more than 5 or 7 years before you have to deal with it again. But I can't think of anything right off the top of my head.
Was it used at Burns Park?
Yes, it was used at Burns Park, but that was
So what-
designed, I want to point out, that was designed specifically to get us temporary relief for the next 4 to 5 years until the city figures out how they're going to replace that. So it was designed done as a temporary measure.
So we did use it using taxpayer money.
To ask questions.
So you know what? So he just said yes.
Okay, thank you.
Council, Mrs. Jewin, you're on mute.
There she is.
I think everybody has kind of skirted around an answer to my question, but my understanding is that the mud jacking doesn't last as long. And so in the long run, the taxpayer is going to be paying more. If they've got to do it twice over a 20-year period, it's probably going to cost them more than doing it initially, as we specify. So my question, I guess, is, does it truly not last as long as our current method?
So we heard Mr. Knudsen's opinion. Mr. Combs, you want to speak to that item, to that question?
Sure. Again, I agree with Jamie. In some certain situations that the soil material, it's only as good as the ground is underneath of it. So certain soil types move due to, higher moisture levels that year, due to dry, if we have droughts, especially during winter when we freeze and thaw, the soil is always adjusting due to those situations that we have to deal with in this part of our climate. So in my expertise with it, I've had areas I've done 10 years ago that no, I have not been back to. I've been by, looked at them, still looks the same as it's done when I did it, when I finished it. I've had other areas that, yes, within 2 to 3 years, I've been back and med-jacked them again. And some of them take 2 or 3 times until we finally get the soil itself compacted to the point where it will pretty much stay. So if it does freeze, it'll actually go up and then come right back down and stay that direction. Sometimes we've mud-jacked them and the ground is froze and moved and shifted enough where it actually raised that slab above the other ones. Then we have to come back and raise the one next to it. Just because now we've taken out that ability for the soils to compress on their own from one slab to another one. So I guess I've got areas where it works great. We've got other areas, you'll have different locations. But the same thing's gonna happen when you tear your slab out and replace it. That if the individual, like Jamie said, if you don't go back and you dig that ground up, that why did it sink in the first place? You could have bad soil at that point where the code a lot of times is just to fill in whatever is needed with like material. I'm not sure if that's changed. I haven't done much concrete work for a while, so Jamie would have to tell you what that code is. But if you use like material of where you're working at, the individual is putting dirt back or sand back underneath of the sidewalk, and they pour a new sidewalk. Sure enough, in a few years, it's gonna settle too again. Just so by the time you come around every 10 years and redo a section, a quadrant of the city, for the city program, you're gonna see those same squares sometimes will be settled. And they'll have to be pulled out and redone again. So you get it on both sides, I guess is my answer.
Mr.
All
Mayor.
right, thank you. Mr. Bozen.
Thank you, sir. Prior to this coming before the council for a vote, I would really like our city engineer to get back to council, because I heard who does it and who doesn't do it. I would like to know the towns that aren't doing it, their reasons why, and why we feel it's not good for Waterloo, and why the towns that are doing it are accepting it. I'd kind of like some information so I have the ability to make an educated vote before this comes back before council. So if he can't get it back next week, if it takes 2 weeks, I'm more than happy to wait until I get the information that I need to make an educated decision.
So Mr. Bozen, he kind of listed out the cities that don't do it. And Jamie, I'm sure that the organizations the people within the organization said there's over 100 communities, maybe, or 100 representatives that don't do that.
Correct.
So, Mr. Boza, you want to know why they each, because Mr. Morrissey did ask earlier to put this on next week. So that's a lot of work for them to find out from 100 different people.
I don't think he really needs to ask 100, sir. I mean, the thing is he says 100 people that are on this commission or whatever it is are against it, but we never really laid out why we're completely against it and why certain cities are for it. And I just like some more detailed information on why we adamantly oppose it. And these other, we don't have to contact all these people. I'm sure there's a couple of cities that would be able to lay out their reasoning behind not allowing mudjacking or allowing mudjacking. I just like some more information.
Yeah, and it's the balancing act, because I'm trying to be, because Mr. Morrissey is asking for this to go on next week. So
Mr. Mayor?
Let me finish. So at some point, you said that you want to see more information, but since Mr. Morrissey has asked, I'm going to have to take a pulse of where the council is at to moving this to next week. But Mrs. Klein.
Well, my thinking is that we've had very little time here to have this discussion. The entire time was taken up with one councilman and speakers, and so I don't like it truncated like that. And I agree with my colleague, Mr. Boson, that I'd like to also hear some deeper reasoning. There's got to be more than that, and I'd like an opportunity to really have a full-on discussion of this, and we have no more time. We have another meeting that we're late for already.
Might I offer one closing comment on this, because
Can you step up to the mic?
and I would agree with Mr. Boson that I did a lot of calling around when I was looking into this and asked, why is mudjacking not allowed? And there were two answers. I don't know, or it doesn't work as well as replacing the concrete. And then the question I asked was, well, if you replace the concrete and didn't solve the reason why the concrete sunk, well, the concrete that you replaced with sank. And the answer was, yeah, there's a problem with runoff or drainage or something. So if mudjacking is not good for sidewalks that sink, neither is replacing the concrete, unless the cause is addressed. So I have yet to hear from anybody why mudjacking is not good. And it may be temporary, but it may be no less temporary than replacing the concrete, which is also going to sink if there's an underlying cause that the original slab decided to sink. So if someone could give me an adequate answer why that wasn't good, I'm wide open to replacing the concrete, but I've yet to hear it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Penn. Council,
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Foyce.
I just have a quick question on the cost of what mudjacking a sidewalk panel would be, and then what we have for what the cost is, like if the city were to do it. I mean, just a rough estimate between the two.
You mean for the sidewalk, or give me
For the sidewalk.
Mr. Combs, cost of mudjacking?
So what we have is, due to the equipment, the employees, and everything that we have to load up and haul to a job site to do something to get started with, we have a minimum fee, $300. A minimum fee will cover that 1 square sidewalk, or it'll cover up to 3, could be 4, depends on the width and the length of the sidewalk. And if it's down 5 inches versus down 1 or 2 inches. So there's some variations in that of what can be considered as the cost. So the minimum that I told Jamie too was $300. So that's my minimum fee to go out and do that. If there's a location that we can, if it's a city sidewalk program and we're covering a whole quadrant, and we know that we can come in and do several out of the whole deal, I can come down and break it down to, cents on the dollar for per square foot, if that's what you would like. So we could work it out however you want to do it. But for me right now today, it's $300 to drive up and do 1 square sidewalk, or if I do 3 or 4.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Mr. Mayor,
Jamie, in regards to Mr. Foyce's question, Mr. Foyce, I think you want to know how much it is to do a square?
Yeah, to replace, completely replace.
Right now, based on our last sidewalk assessment, it was $215 for a square. That was if the city did it, and that assessment cost includes city staff time, publishing, and all the other things that we're allowed to charge under state law.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor,
Morrissey.
I just want to add again that, what Mr. Knudsen just said was $215 per square, and what Mr. Combs said was a minimum of 300, if there's just 1 square. If there's more than 1 square, that $300 might be able to do at that price or a little bit above, 3 to 4 squares, possibly. And the reason why this so interests me is not only for the environmental concerns that Mr. Penn brought up, but also for the cost savings to people of Waterloo who have come forward and talked about the need to have some kind of financial relief from this. If mudjacking is going to afford people a better chance at paying this at a lower cost to them, and is going to show itself to be just as reliable, if not even in some situations more reliable, then why would we not allow the citizens, the people of Waterloo, who are being asked to pay for sidewalk repair, to use this option? It is merely an option. It's not a mandate that everybody has to do it, nor that they use Mr. Combs' business. It is an option only. And I hope that the council understands that it's not mandating anybody or everybody to use this as an option.
Right. Council, Mr. Greider or anyone else with questions or comments before I check the pulse of the council? I think right now the council is just saying, can we get some more information? But I will ask the question for you, Mr. Morrissey. Mr. Greider, you have anything before I get a pulse?
Just to get my pulse, I would just like more information about why people, why some cities oppose it, why other cities are acceptable. I just need more information before I can make an informed decision. So that's where I'm at.
All right. So Mr. Morrissey's request is to put this on for next week for a vote.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Morrissey.
I'd like to say that if you schedule it for 2 weeks from now, that should give council enough time to get the information. So I just request that it be put on the agenda for October 19th.
So, and then in between, so don't have another work session to discuss this, just put it on the agenda. Is that what you're asking for?
As long as there is a balanced as long as there is a balanced giving of information regarding the pros and cons of mudjacking versus total reconstruct.
So you want me to put this on in 2 weeks? Do you want me to get a post from council?
Yes, I'd like to have it go on in 2 weeks, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Morrissey would like to see this on the agenda in 2 weeks. Mr. Bolton?
Yes, I'd like to see it in 2 weeks, if we can get some information prior to that meeting.
All right, and, okay, Mrs. Jewett?
If I
I
could
hate
mention
to
something?
set an arbitrary date, when we don't know if that's enough time for Jamie to get the information. So I would like to get the information from Jamie, have a work session to address it, and then decide when we're gonna put it on the agenda, if at all.
So we have Mr. Bozen said, put it on, and get info. You're saying, don't put it on until we have a work session. Mr. Foyce?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I'm okay with 2 weeks. I believe that our staff may be able to get some of that, and I think we need to do, as council people, need to do some of our own homework on it as well. Somebody, you know, I actually just used Mr. Combs' services this past week, so, you know, I'm gonna find out if the mud jacking process works or not. So, I mean, it was quick and easy on my part, and so excited about that. But let's give it a couple of weeks. Come back.
19th. Mr. Greider?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point we've heard about what the process is. I think if we have our own information, then we have a public discussion about it, in front of the public where they can voice their opinions in 2 weeks. I'm fine with that, as long as we get the information.
All right, Mrs. Klein?
I'm more inclined to go along with Sharon, however, I see that she and I are outnumbered.
Oh, this is not outnumbered. It's just trying to figure out what direction, or you guys give me direction for what you want from Mr. Morrissey's request. So I'm hearing October 19th, put this on the council agenda. You want information, potentially, Mr. Morrissey will work on with Mr. Combs or whoever to provide information. And then I'm hearing some information from some of the people within the organization that are engineers, and why they may not support it being used for public reasons. So we'll have that on the 19th, and I guess that's where I'm hearing the will of the majority. All right.
Can I
Thank you,
make
Mr.
a
Mayor.
comment real quick, Mr. Mayor?
No. Yeah, you can.
Okay. Well, I tell you
Real
what,
quick.
you never know about you. Just one thing I want to put out there that in this process, whether through Pat and anything and whatever's gone on that we've done in town for work, but there's two different methods out there right now. One is what we do. The other one is what's foam raising. So to me, if you're going to do it as a city program, if you're going to allow it, you're going to move forward with that. To me, in my, I've got a somewhat engineering degree, just like Jamie does, in civil engineering, many years of experience in the work. To me, the foam, I'm just going to say, is I don't think the foam is a proper use. The DOT has used it quite a bit. I'm not sure where they're at nowadays with doing that. There's a lot of companies buying the foam system and going with that, but once it's done with the foam, and if it's very thick, you're not going to come back and do it again. So,
Mr. Why don't you work with Mr. Morrissey, and when he presents an option of what you all believe is the best product, why don't you work with him on that? And then that's what we'll do, because I think he brought you in here presenter with knowledge. All right, thank you, good sir. Thank you, Mr. Penn. Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. Sorry, Kelly.
I mean, I'm crying a little bit, but I'll get it under control.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second?
Motion been made with second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? We adjourn.